The fall of the Soviet Union was caused by many different factors. By the mid-80s, the Soviet economy was struggling to compete with other global powers, and the agricultural industry had fallen behind, due primarily to lack of technological advancements. The communist system was struggling to remain competitive with the global private industry, and the Soviet people were bearing the brunt of the suffering. Because of these inadequacies, the popularity of communism was waning, especially in smaller states within the USSR. It was also particularly noticeable in the Eastern Bloc, where multiple democratic uprisings were occurring. In 1985, Mikhail Gorbachev, the chairman of the Communist Party and the de facto leader of the Soviet Union, implemented two highly controversial policies, perestroika and glasnost. The former being a policy of economic reform which allowed small-scale capitalism within the socialist system, the latter being a policy of openness which allowed the media to report more freely and a more westernized take on social participation in elections. While these policies may have helped reinvigorate the sputtering Soviet economy, they had many repercussions. With the media reporting more freely under glasnost, many Soviet people were for the first time aware of the scale of corruption within the government. This contributed to the mounting unrest of the general public. The other major policy, perestroika, received backlash from Soviet officials. Then, in August 1991, a group of high-ranking Soviet officials, including the head of the KGB, decided that Gorbachev was pushing the country in a negative direction. 8 people formed a group called the States Committee and staged a coup against Gorbachev. When the chairman was visiting his vacation home in Crimea, they held him in house arrest and demanded that he resign for the good of the country. When Gorbachev refused, they prevented him from addressing the public and put the country in an official state of emergency, telling the media that Gorbachev was too ill to resume duty as the leader of the Soviet Union. The States Committee then marched tanks and armored cars on the White House in Moscow to finalize their coup. However, due to the President of Russia, Boris Yeltsin, his vehement defense of his chairman, and his claim that the coup was unconstitutional, there was a massive civil intervention against the States Committee. People swarmed the streets of Moscow in protest. Yeltsin himself delivered a speech atop a tank denouncing the coup attempt. Eventually, the coup officially dissolved and Gorbachev was reinstated. But due to the popularity of Yeltsin and the public disgrace Gorbachev had endured, the chairman's grip on the reins of the Soviet Union was slipping. Gorbachev found himself leading a country that was falling apart around him. Many states within the Soviet Union were seceding. Shortly after, Gorbachev resigned from his position as chairman, and rather than it being filled by another, the position's powers were transferred to the president. The remaining states who hadn't seceded from the Union then formed the Russian Federation, with Boris Yeltsin as leader. Shortly after, the Soviet Union formally dissolved on December 26, 1991, just 4 months after the coup.